Hi, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about this second half of this novel, which is called The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. The narrator starts to grow apart from the Brotherhood, and also Ross, who is a kind of racist against white people, starts creating more trouble in the area. If you don't want to hear any spoilers, I suggest you use the timestamps below to move forward to my final thoughts on the novel. Another guy in the Brotherhood is called Todd Clifton, but he leaves the Brotherhood, and to the narrator's consternation, he's selling sambos, which are basically racist caricatures of African American people. He feels like the Brotherhood are getting nowhere with their mission to supposedly empower African American people. Todd Clifton ends up getting shot, and so the narrator organizes a funeral. He also organizes a protest before the funeral. But the senior members of the Brotherhood are very disappointed in the narrator for doing all this. It's clear the division between himself and the Brotherhood is growing, and he very much objects to Ross and his mob. In fact, Ross and his mob try to kill the narrator, so he finds his way to a shop and gets a disguise. The community then misidentifies the narrator as Reinhardt. He is a respected guy in the community. Towards the end of the novel, Ross and his mob set fire to a residential building, clearly taking a completely destructive path. The narrator tells them that the Brotherhood have filled the African American community with zest and then deserted them so that they would follow Ross, and that the Brotherhood are ultimately hypocrites. Still, Ross's mob pursues the narrator, and he ends up falling down a manhole. And so we get the epilogue where we learn where he's been for quite some time. And this is the place that he's in the prologue that he tells his story from. In the epilogue, he concludes he will eventually come above ground to forge his way in the world again. So my final thoughts are, this is a very good novel. I found the author to be particularly good at pacing. He creates the exact appropriate pace for each scene by, for example, altering the length of sentences appropriate to each scene. I think you can tell he was a musician and had a very good ear for the rhythm of prose. There are some great metaphors in this work and also great similes. You could say that he labors his points too much about various issues. But that itself is a literary technique to repeat in order to get messages across. This is a political piece of writing, almost more than a story, and that was its shortcoming for me. It was a little depressing at times. That's one of the reasons why it took me so long to read. You only really get hope at the end. However, there is a definite defiance throughout this novel. Many people in life will try and put you down, but you must try and overcome the obstacles people put in your place, and you feel there's a great resilience from the narrator. The character development is good. He goes from a guy who just follows what he's expected to do and then finds organizations he can join, but none of it works for him, so he basically decides he needs to be independent-minded and forge his own way in the world. There are great descriptions in this novel, and the author brings you to different scenes using the five senses well. And he shows all the time rather than telling, which is a great technique that modern day authors try to stick to generally. The author also draws you close to the narrator by getting the narrator to ask himself questions within the text, which almost gets you as a reader into the mind of the narrator. So I think this is a great novel for those who are interested in literary techniques, because Ralph Ellison was clearly a genius at deploying these in his writing. My favorite parts of this novel were the prologue and the epilogue, because they were surrealist. And I was a bit disappointed that there wasn't much of this extremely imaginative writing throughout the rest of the novel. The novel is full of action and rhetorical prose. You only get hope at the end, which is a bit of a disappointment. He generally moves from hardship to hardship. I've never read anything by Ralph Ellison before, but he's clearly a brilliant writer with his own totally unique voice. And there's nothing artificial about this novel at all. You know, with some writers you feel like they're doing it for a career, but there's something completely natural about this novel. It's as if he was made to write it. It's a brilliantly executed classic, and as I say, it's particularly of interest to those who are interested in rhetorical techniques. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.